Social Psychological Analysis of Sandeep Reddy Vanga and Animal. 1. Toxic Masculinity and Gender Norms. Animal has sparked significant debate for its portrayal of hypermasculine, violent protagonists, with critics arguing that it glorifies toxic masculinity and misogyny. From a social psychological perspective, Vanga's films, including Animal, Arjun Reddy, and Kabir Singh, reflect and amplify traditional gender norms that emphasize male dominance, aggression, and control. These portrayals align with the concept of hegemonic masculinity, where societal ideals of manhood prioritize power and stoicism, often at the expense of emotional vulnerability or respect for women. In-group and out-group dynamics, Vanga's protagonists, like Ranvijay in Animal, are depicted as alpha males who reject softer, poetry-writing stereotypes of men, explicitly framing them as an outgroup. This rhetoric taps into social identity theory, where individuals derive self-esteem from their group membership. By glorifying the alpha male, Vanga's films appeal to audiences who identify with or aspire to this identity, reinforcing a polarized view of masculinity. Critics, labeled as woke or liberals by Vanga and his supporters, form an opposing outgroup, intensifying cultural divides. Normalization of violence. The film's extreme violence and misogynistic undertones can be analyzed through desensitization theory. Repeated exposure to violent or misogynistic content in media can reduce emotional sensitivity to such behaviors, potentially normalizing them. Critics, including IAS officer Vikas Devyakirti, have argued that Animal takes our society back by 10 years by presenting a hero who behaves like an animal without sufficient moral consequence, potentially influencing impressionable audiences to emulate such behaviors. 2. Social influence and audience reception. Vanga's films, particularly Animal, have achieved massive commercial success despite critical backlash, grossing over 900 crore worldwide. This dichotomy highlights the power of social influence in shaping audience perceptions. Conformity and fan culture. The film's popularity among certain demographics, often described as Vanga stans or incels, reflects conformity to a subculture that celebrates Vanga's unapologetic, provocative style. Social learning theory suggests that audiences, particularly young men, may adopt the attitudes and behaviors modeled by Ranvijay due to his portrayal as a powerful, desirable figure. Supporters like Ram Gopal Varma and Anurag Kashyap have praised Vanga's raw honesty, framing Animal as a social statement that challenges moral hypocrisy, further legitimizing these attitudes within fan circles. Polarization and reactance. Vanga's confrontational stance against critics, whom he calls illiterate and uneducated, reflects psychological reactance, where individuals resist perceived threats to their freedom, in this case, artistic freedom. By doubling down on controversial themes, Vanga appeals to audiences who feel alienated by woke cultural critiques, creating a loyal fanbase that perceives his films as rebellious. This dynamic fuels a feedback loop where criticism amplifies his defiance, further polarizing audiences and critics. 3. Media effects and social responsibility. From a social psychological perspective, media like Animal can shape societal attitudes through cultivation theory, which posits that prolonged exposure to media content influences viewers' perceptions of reality. The film's depiction of violence and misogyny as central to its protagonist's identity raises questions about its social impact. Criticism of glorification. Critics argue that Animal lacks nuance in exploring its protagonist's psychopathy, presenting violence and misogyny as thrilling rather than problematic. This aligns with concerns about media priming, where exposure to certain behaviors, for example, aggression or objectification of women, can activate related thoughts and actions in viewers. Social media posts on X have echoed this, with users lamenting the treatment of women in Vanga's films and calling Animal rubbish for its reliance on violence fueled by misogyny. Vanga's defense and social responsibility. Vanga rejects the notion that his films should serve as moral guides, arguing that expecting films to instill values is akin to making cartoons. He emphasizes artistic freedom over social responsibility, a stance supported by filmmakers like Anurag Kashyap, who faced similar criticism for Dev.D. This reflects a broader debate in social psychology about whether media creators should consider their influence on societal attitudes, particularly when portraying troubled characters. 4. Father-son dynamics and attachment theory. Animal centers on a troubled father-son relationship, with Ranvijay's violent actions driven by a pathological need for his father's approval. This can be analyzed through attachment theory, which explores how early relationships with caregivers shape personality and behavior. Insecure attachment. Ranvijay's obsession with his emotionally distant father reflects an insecure attachment style, leading to extreme behaviors to gain validation. Vanga has stated that the film draws from his observations of friends longing for absent fathers, suggesting a personal connection to this theme. However, critics argue that the film fails to deeply explore this psychology, instead using it as a superficial justification for violence. Cultural resonance. The father-son dynamic resonates in patriarchal societies like India, where familial expectations and honor are deeply ingrained. Vanga's portrayal taps into collectivist cultural norms, where loyalty to family overrides individual morality, appealing to audiences who relate to these pressures. This cultural alignment contributes to the film's mass appeal despite its controversies. 5. Vanga's persona and social perception. Vanga's public persona, defiant, provocative, and unapologetic, shapes how his work is perceived. From a social psychological perspective, his behavior aligns with self-presentation theory, where individuals manage impressions to achieve specific goals. By positioning himself as an anti-establishment figure, Vanga cultivates a cult-like following while alienating critics. Provocative persona. Vanga's verbal attacks on critics, for example, calling them 15 to 20 jokers, and his dismissal of wokeness in Indian audiences amplify his image as a rebel. This resonates with fans who view him as challenging elitist or liberal norms, but it also alienates those who see his films as socially regressive. Selective criticism. Vanga's observation that Ranbir Kapoor was praised for his performance in Animal while he faced criticism highlights attribution bias. Audiences and critics may attribute the film's controversial elements to Vanga's direction rather than Kapoor's acting, reflecting a tendency to blame the creator over the performer. This disparity fuels Vanga's sense of being unfairly targeted. 6. Cultural and societal impact. Animal's commercial success and polarizing reception reflect broader societal tensions, particularly around gender, violence, and artistic freedom. Social psychology's social comparison theory explains how audiences compare Vanga's films to other media or societal ideals, leading to divergent reactions. Cultural divide. The film's appeal to a mass audience, particularly young men, suggests it taps into frustrations with modern gender expectations or woke culture, as Vanga himself has claimed. Conversely, critics and social media users argue it reinforces harmful stereotypes, highlighting a cultural divide between traditional and progressive values. Box office versus critical reception. The film's financial success despite critical panning illustrates cognitive dissonance among audiences who enjoy its entertainment value while acknowledging its problematic themes. This tension is evident in reviews praising the performances and action sequences while condemning the narrative's morality. Conclusion. Sandeep Reddy Vanga's Animal serves as a case study in social psychology, illustrating how media can reinforce gender norms, polarize audiences, and spark debates about social responsibility. Through the lens of hegemonic masculinity, social influence, and attachment theory, Vanga's work appeals to audiences who resonate with its raw, unfiltered portrayal of male aggression while alienating those who see it as regressive. His provocative persona and defiance of critics amplify these dynamics, creating a cultural phenomenon that thrives on controversy. While Animal succeeds commercially, its social impact remains contentious, raising questions about the role of filmmakers in shaping societal attitudes. If you'd like a deeper analysis of specific scenes, characters, or psychological concepts, or if you meant a different animal film, for example, Andy Serkis Animal Farm, please clarify, and I can tailor the response further.